Hey everyone, this is Mr. McIntosh, and welcome to week 4 of the fourth quarter. Before I start today, I want to give a shout out to all the students still completing the optional enrichment activities for Mockingbird, for anyone who is participating in the discussion board and completed one of the mini essays from last week. It's awesome to see students still working even though the work is not graded. And if you did submit work last week, I'd say I'm finished grading, or I shouldn't say grading, I'm finished looking through about half of those and providing feedback, and I'll have the rest of them either in the grade book or if you're doing the remediation activities, or I'll provide you some feedback by the end of today. So just check that again in a couple hours. All right, so we're wrapping up Mockingbird, and we're going to start a new unit next week, which is a poetry unit. So the optional and the enrichment activities for this week are about two pretty interesting concepts in Mockingbird. So we talked a little bit about class segregation, levels of education, and disparity in that regard for Mockingbird. So the first activity is related to that. It is an interactive map, kind of like a scavenger hunt, how I have it set up here. And basically, the map shows how public schools are funded in America. And it breaks it down by individual county. So when you go to the website, scroll down to the second map. You can't interact with the first one. And you can zoom into any area in the United States, and it will show you how much funding that particular school system receives per student per year. And it's also color coded, which it explains in the bottom left corner here. So your activity asks you a couple of different questions, and you have to interact with this map to answer those. But start thinking about funding and school funding and how it could vary across different counties, across different states, across different regions. All right, so we'll talk a little bit more about that next week after everyone's gone through it. And the other activity here, so this one I think is pretty interesting as well. It talks about the term redneck and stereotyping, and basically an author named Malcolm Gladwell wrote a very long article making his case for Atticus not quite being the hero that he is often held up to be by readers and teachers. So read through his words here, read through the excerpt from the first page, and then you'll be making your opinion after you read those arguments. Is Atticus, this moral paragon, this saint, this really good person that we always tend to paint him as, or does he have some shortcomings that Gladwell points out? So basically, do you agree with Malcolm Gladwell? Or do you not agree with him? And lastly, there's an anticipation guide for poetry, just to get you thinking about poetry for next week. These are opinion questions, so obviously there's no right or wrong answers here, but start kind of like gets you in the mood for poetry, which will begin next week, one of my favorite units of the school year. All right, so those are the enrichment and optional activities. If you're doing the CB grade recovery, the different folders are linked here depending on whichever project you've chosen to pursue. And if you're completing the ED recovery, the assignments are in here as well. Pretty similar to last week, you'll continue with your independent reading as a no red ink activity, and then there's some components you'll work on for your essay in addition to that. Office hours, still the same, tomorrow or Tuesday at 10 a.m. And then send me an email if you have any questions, if you need clarification, or just to say hey. All right, so that's week 4. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you next week.